Brilliant. So just a very, very warm welcome, Arthapriya. We've all been sitting here meditating, trying to get up to your level, and I think we've come some way to welcoming you. We're about ready to welcome you. But yeah, thanks very, very much for agreeing to do this. It was interesting kind of planning this. Alan was pointing out that planning is always uncertain. You never know. But in this case, I was all the more uncertain that it wasn't clear, was it, whether you'd be able to do this or not. So not always wise to agree. Yeah, but thanks very, very much.
Yeah,
for agreeing.
I couldn't quite remember agreeing, actually. It seemed to be in the newsletter, so I thought I should come over. The risk was that you might come down where I live. So.
And for the topic, this area of discipleship, just seems so good to have you here to ask you about it. Ordained, I don't know how many people now. I always lose the figure, but it's 36 privately, and then about 200 publicly or something.
Yeah, not as many as that, obviously, but quite a lot.
Yeah, and it's a topic that we've been exploring and discussing recently, which I've been really affected by, actually, just talking about that with you. So just very good to unfold it. But it might be good to start in a way. What I'd most like to do is kind of ask you a bit more about your experience of your relationship, discipleship, whatever we call it, with Bhante. Yes, not all of us. Some of us were ordained by Bhante. But anyway, that's what I'd like mainly to do. But maybe before that, just to sort of get into the territory, sort of what are we talking about actually with discipleship? And rather than asking for a description, I thought I could just ask, how do we go about becoming a disciple?
Before I say anything on that, maybe I need to give you a bit of background to the beginning of my sort of spiritual journey. So I was living in Stoke-on-Trent, and somebody who thought I would be interested gave me a cassette of a BBC 4, I think it was, programme, and it was Christmas Humphreys talking about his life. And of course, Christmas Humphreys was a well-known Buddhist. I don't know how well-known he is now, but he was very well-known, the founder of the Buddhist Society. And he had a number of actors reading stories from the Pali Canon. And I put off listening to it for quite a long time, but one night I wasn't going down the pub, so I was at a loose end, so I put the cassette on, and I listened to it. And he got one actor to read the story of Kisagotami, and it was so familiar. I was a lapsed Catholic, I would say, at that point, and I kind of knew what was going to happen in the story, because Jesus would have raised the baby, back to life. And that's what the story is about, this distraught mother bringing her baby to the Buddha, hoping that he can cure what ails the baby. But the baby's dead. And so the Buddha sends her off, if you know the story, for some seed, doesn't he?
Mustard seed.
Mustard seed. And in an Indian household, everybody's got mustard seed on the shelf. But there was one thing she has to do, which is it mustn't come from any house where somebody has died. servant or a family member, a house where nobody has died. So she goes off, probably clinging to hope. She's got hope again, and everybody sees the state she's in, and everybody is willing to give her some mustard seed. But then she asks, you know, is this a house where anybody has died? And wherever she goes, somebody has died. And slowly, slowly she sees, it sinks in, that this unique tragedy, you know, for her, is actually shared by all. And I was thinking that the Buddha was a bit like an Indian Jesus. I was really wowed by that. Mm-hmm. And she comes back to the Buddha without the baby. She's buried the baby. And she asks the Buddha to accept her as a disciple. And not only did she want to be a disciple, I wanted to be a disciple. I heard the story and that was it. I couldn't go back to Catholicism. I had tried, but I couldn't go back. And I really needed a spiritual kind of heart to my life. So I was a Buddhist, but I didn't know the first thing about, you know, what it is to be a Buddhist. And 2.5 years passed. There was no internet at this point. Don't forget, no internet. I couldn't put in, you know, what is Buddhism, and get the answers. And so I searched around everywhere I could to find anything that was, you know, connected with Buddhism, and it was hard. I think there was one book, the Dhammapada, in the big bookshop in town. One book, that was it. So for 2.5 years, I had a really heartfelt wish to meet the Buddha as I'd met him on that night in my flat, to find out what Buddhism was, to become a disciple, without finding any kind of lead. And I thought, well, I need to move. I was in Stoke-on-Trent. Buddhism is very exotic in Stoke-on-Trent. Yeah, Methodism is quite exotic in Stoke-on-Trent at the time. And so I moved down to Bristol in the hope of, you know, finding a lead in my search. And I did. I found the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order, and eventually I found Bhante. And I went on retreat at Pamaloka, and I arranged an interview with Bhante Sangharakshita, and I saw him for 2 hours, quite a long time. In later years, I wondered whether I overstayed my, my time, overstayed my welcome. But somebody said if Bhante wanted to end the interview, you would know it. So I was there for 2 hours, and I found my teacher, and I found the path. So I found the Buddha, but it was a long time before I found any Buddhists or any path. And I was a disciple. This man was my teacher. I don't know whether he knew that, and I can't tell you what a difference it made finding a wise person. And that's what I felt I'd found. I found somebody who knew much more deeply than I did. But I think I did have a glimpse of what we could call kind of perfect vision, but I didn't know what to do with it. And I certainly didn't want it to fade. But it didn't seem to fade. It seemed to grow stronger, you know. And now I'd found a community and a path and a teacher. And you probably know, some of you will know that the Buddha said after his enlightenment that it was painful to have no one or no thing that you looked up to, no thing that you reverenced. It was painful, and he felt that was painful. So he looked around to see who he could reverence, and there was no one. So he reverenced the Dharma, and we don't exactly know what that means. It doesn't mean the scriptures. It doesn't mean the formulations. It means something else. But even the Buddha, even the enlightened one, the most spiritually developed, the awakened one, the most spiritually awakened person, felt that lack in his life, and I'd felt that.
That's really great. That covers the whole span, doesn't it? From you being a lapsed Catholic up to the Buddha, and you talked actually about discipleship all the way through that. So it might be that we think that discipleship is the point at which you find the teacher, but actually you said you kind of you wanted to be a disciple of the Buddha when you first encountered. Yeah, you're sort of saying that actually discipleship is something that runs through Buddhism, runs through the experience of Buddhism. So I wonder, I suppose a lot of us coming along to a centre might not be thinking in terms of discipleship. Certainly not the model I had in my head. You know, I go along to a centre because I feel the need to become a disciple. That definitely wasn't the thought. But do you think? Yeah, I mean,
It wasn't with me. Right. Back, I can think I was looking for a teacher. I wanted to be a disciple, but that's looking back. I just wanted somebody to tell me what to do. I found what I wanted to do, but I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. So there was a response, but how do I follow this? How do I follow this through? Yeah.
And you know what it's like. You do a lot of newcomers classes, don't you? And people come for all sorts of reasons, and sometimes they don't know why they've come. One order member told me that he had come initially to improve his golf, and just learned so much more than that. He'd given up golf, so much more than that. It might be any number of reasons why you come along. Maybe something is missing in your life, like it was missing in my life, and you're looking around for some answer to that.
I suppose discipleship makes that personal, relational, doesn't it? Thinking in terms of certainly, I wasn't thinking relationally. I was thinking, I want to try out meditation, see if that can change my mind. I was struck by Buddhism, but I wasn't necessarily sort of thinking relationally. But Bhante, in that interesting postscript, he says it is necessary to feel an emotional connection and a sense of gratitude towards those from whom we've learnt the Dharma. So that's really interesting, isn't it? It's necessary to feel an emotional connection with. It's quite downplayed, quite understated compared with the Tibetan tradition, for example, which places a lot of importance on the guru. At the same time, it's quite distinct, isn't it, from our culture of teachers. Where there's we keep a professional distance. Emotional connection is not necessary, encouraged as necessary in a professional kind of context. Very, very carefully sort of protocoled, isn't it, the relationship between teacher and pupil. So this is what we're talking about is quite distinct, isn't it? How was that for you? Kind of. Was that? Did you sort of have an interest in that kind of relationship? Was that something that you were looking for in your life prior to coming along to Buddhism, or?
I don't know. I mean, the first order member that I met, I didn't take to. And I was sitting there through his talk with this kind of critical voice kind of going on. And I think it was only later when I realised that what I was being given that I felt, kind of gratitude. I think it will be different for different people. That's what I wanted to say at the beginning of this, in a way, really. I'm talking about my experience of discipleship, but it will be different for different people. And, so what I say, if it doesn't apply to you, if you think, well, no, that's not how I see it, that is fine. Yeah. But just in a way, if you want to learn any skill, you need to find somebody who knows something about it, don't you? Who knows more about it than you do. If you want to, using a climbing metaphor, if you want to climb a mountain, or just go down to your local wall and climb, you'd be sensible, wouldn't you, to find somebody who could teach you. And sometimes people want to do it on their own. They don't want any help in doing it. They kind of resent almost that they're being helped. But a sensible thing is that you put yourself with people who know a bit more about it than you do. And in Buddhism, that happens as well, doesn't it? You come to the centre, you're with somebody who knows more about Buddhism than you do. And Bhante once said that teacher isn't the right word for us, really. It's not like we are teaching this abstract kind of subject. We're inviting people into our life. We're sharing our Dharma life with them. And something sometimes sparks off in them. It's wonderful sometimes being at a newcomers class and you're talking about, the Four Noble Truths, and something that the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago, and somebody, a complete kind of beginner, really lights up because they know what suffering is, and the truths really kind of impact them. They might be a bus driver, they might be an IT person, but something speaks to them. There is a spark made, and they draw closer. And it happened in the Buddha's day, didn't it? That sometimes when people were seeing the Buddha, they would sit on the outside. They didn't want to come too close. They would sit on the outside and listen, and it kind of made sense. And they got kind of closer, And then in the end, not only did it make sense, it blew the top of their heads off, And we hear that they want to commit themselves. They want to be a disciple. They want to sit right at the feet of the Buddha and become a disciple. And they're always kind of related to that. They may put it in different words, and they kind of stumble with their words. They can't get the words out, can they? It's like somebody's brought a light into a dark place. I don't know what we, modern people would say. It's blown my head off.
Yeah. So that is quite different from geography, isn't it? That sort of experience. Do you think that's what's been got at with this emotional connection? That it's not this point that it's not merely exchange of information. It's actually an emotional thing, i.e., genuine communication.
Yeah. Well, I'm put in mind of Sarvajit and Dhammanatha are here, aren't they? And they were in a Mitra study group with me, and they were not Mitras at the time, and so we rocked up on the first night, and or didn't know one another, and something happened because it was I think we were studying for about 3 or 4 years, weren't we? Something happened. 5 years was it? Oh my God, 5 years. They got to know me. I got to know them, and you realise that both they and me are trying to do the same thing. It's not that I've done it, and they need to find out how to do it. I'm trying to find out how to do it as well. And a really good way of finding out how to do it is to communicate the Dharma. Like I think I've gone more into discipleship this last few days than I have for a long time, because I'm here, and you might ask difficult questions. And I remember Salvador, I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, but he would say, well, I'm not sure. We'd be looking at a particular talk or a particular text. I don't know whether I agree with that. And it was great because that really triggered an exciting evening. Because the worst thing that can happen in a Dharma study group is everybody says, yeah, fine. Couldn't disagree with any of it. And you think, have you read it? Have you read it? So he would say, well, I'm not sure about it, and we'd go into it. We'd have to go into it because he said that. And quite often, I don't know whether every night, but quite often, clarity would kind of dawn. And I will say with Salvador, that kind of questioning was always really kind of positive. It wasn't, I know I don't go along with this, and I'm not going to go along with this. It was, is this what the Buddha is saying?
Right.
You need to find out that, don't you? Is this what is being said? Or am I reacting to something, that I think is being said? And yeah, so it's a bit of an adventure. You study, but it isn't really study. It's exploration. You're bringing your experience together with the Buddha's experience, and you're looking at it. You're opening yourself up to that. You're opening yourself up to somebody who knows. Not somebody who just has thought more deeply, but somebody who knows kind of directly. And sometimes it reveals to me how little I do know. How much of what I think I know is borrowed, is second-hand,
So can I ask you a bit more about sort of, ordination, because that, might be sort of, in some way, sort of discipleship in a more formal, full sense. Just before asking you more about your experience, how do we go about that? What should we be looking for in a teacher?
Well, this is interesting because you have been ordained, and you've been ordained by me.
Oh, yes.
So what were you looking for?
Trouble. Yeah. Well, do you know, it makes it a little bit, sound a little bit deliberate, doesn't it? And, maybe that would be a good thing, in terms of a sort of a deliberated kind of process. I don't think it was that for me. But what emerged out of getting to know you was actually, even still unconscious then, it was encountering a disciple. It was encountering somebody who was following, actually, i.e. someone who was trying to put it into practice. That was apparent to me, and I was very, very attracted by that. In a way, how could you learn to be a disciple from someone who's not a disciple?
Yeah.
You're going to slightly get the wrong end of the stick, but I think that was key.
Yeah. I remember with you, I think it was a winter retreat, and you were going around the order members asking them why did they get ordained, you know, and we knew that you were going around, and you know, and then it was my turn to go out with him, and I have to confess that, you know, you want your answers to be the most convincing. So we come back from the walk, and you know, James, as he was then, would say, "Right, thank you, Arthapriya. I'm going to ask for ordination now." And that didn't happen, did it? You said, and went away. And you know, only later did that happen. Yeah, you as you move closer, I think, towards the Dharma, as you try and incorporate the Dharma into your life, you know, here in our particular Sangha, it means you move closer to people, don't you? We learn so much Dharma from just being around people. I mean, sometimes somebody's giving a talk, you know, at the centre, and the real work of the Dharma can come in the tea break. It can be, I don't know, you know, those who supported courses, there's a talk on nirvana, and then you go off to have tea, and you think, oh, thank goodness for that, a cup of tea, you know. And then a newcomer comes up to you and says, I didn't get it. What is nirvana? You know, and you have to say something, don't you? And you know more than you think you know once somebody's helping you, you know, draw that out of you, and you make a connection with the person. It's not an abstract person, it's a person, it's a human being, you know, like you, wanting to know what is being said, and does it have any import, you know, for them. That Mitra study group that I talked about, we became close, we became friends, we shared our life with one another. And slowly, people became mitras, and then they asked for ordination, and then in the end, I think most of the people in the group were order members. It was a bit embarrassing. It wasn't really a mitra study group. It was like an order study group with a couple of mitras in it, and but it was a highlight for me. Those who had been strangers became part of our Sangha. They made connections. What a beautiful thing that happens is the newcomer you know, starts to help other people, to help newer people, reaches out to newer people, shares what they know with newer people. And there's a lovely little story, isn't there, in the Buddhist texts where Sariputta, who became one of the chief disciples of the Buddha, Sariputta is looking for a teacher. He and his friend Moggallana are looking for a teacher. They've split up so they can be more effective. And Sariputta sees Ashvaji, and Ashvaji looks so bright. He says, maybe this man has found the truth, you know, found the teacher. And he has, but he says to Sariputta, I don't know very much, but what I know I will share with you. And he shares something with Sariputta. He shares Praticca Samutpada, so it's not a little, it's quite a lot. And it's said for the rest of Sariputta's life, and he becomes far more enlightened. That's not quite the right way of putting it, but far more advanced than Ashvajit. But for the rest of his life, Sariputta, before going to bed, prostrates in the direction he thinks Ashvadit is staying. And so you can have a tremendous effect. You don't need to be, an order member. You just need to connect you with the Dharma, love the Dharma, and that will come out. And you may make all the difference to somebody coming along, so that later on they will reference you as the person that made that difference. And at Padmaloka, the men's retreat centre, I worked there, for many, many years. When people did their life story, they would say things like, it was John who reached out to me. It was Phil that took me out for coffee and made a friend of me, and that's what got me involved.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was an order member.
Yeah, and it can seem almost incidental, some of this, can't it? But as you're drawing out, this is all part of that thread, that essential thread of discipleship.
Yeah.
That's sort of inseparable from Buddhism.
Yeah.
I wonder though, can I ask you more about that experience with Bhante, that first experience where suddenly you realised you had met your teacher. So what is that actually? You've got Kalyana Mitras, haven't you? Sona's your Kalyana Mitra.
That didn't come until a lot later.
It didn't come until a lot later. But it's different, isn't it? Someone being a Kalyana Mitra. Kalyana Mitra, for anyone who's not heard it, means spiritual friend or beautiful friend, auspicious friend, isn't it? So how is that different? Feeling this person is my teacher, from this person is my Kalyana Mitra, from even this is my mentor or something. I don't know, my meditation mentor.
It's almost like spatially, they exist more centrally. And then there were people like Surata, who lives at Padmaloka, who was a very, very good friend to me. When I was feeling quite down sometimes, I was finding it quite hard preparing for ordination. He was a light to me. He reached out to me, he encouraged me, and he was really, really important. So there were other people very, very important in my journey. But there's something about Bhante, the weight of Bhante, the centrality of Bhante. For other people it would be different. They'll put it in a very different way. I remember when I was appointed as a preceptor, so I was going to ordain 2 people on a 4-month course in Spain. And it's the night of the ordinations, and I go into the kuti. The kuti is the little little shed, little place, hut, where you do the ordinations, and just 2 of you. And so I got into the hut, and the shrine is all laid out. The first person I'm going to ordain, not just that evening, but the first person I'm going to ordain ever, is coming in 5 minutes' time. And I thought, oh my God, what am I doing here? How did I get here? And I've got 5 minutes to sort myself out. And there were pictures of lots of the bodhisattvas and the Buddhas. And then I thought, well, my Kalyana Mitras have got confidence in me. The people I look up to in the order have got confidence in me. Bhante has confidence in me. And I don't do this on my own. I do this as part of a lineage. Bhante had teachers, they had teachers. It all goes right back to the Buddha. You do it in a lineage. You do it in a kind of context of discipleship and spiritual friendship. So when I heard his footsteps coming towards Sakuti, it was like me and lots of others in the hut, you know, crowded in. You know, I could do it. I couldn't do it if it was off my own bat. It would seem, I don't know. It would seem I just couldn't do it. But I could do it in that lineage, because I was genuinely trying to deepen my going for refuge, and I saw in this man, you know, his sincere attempts to deepen his going for refuge too, and to have that witnessed is a really strong thing. And something does happen. It's not that they just get ordained. Something happens to your relationship. Between you, something between you changes, and I think your relationship with your teacher is on very many levels. So, you know, you can go out for coffee and you can talk about music, and you can talk about politics and all the rest of it. You can have a laugh. That's there. You can talk about things going on in the family. That's there. You can talk about more existential things. That is there too. And you just naturally and genuinely find the ground. You don't need to say, well, you know, I've got my disciple hat on now. So I feel like with you and I, you know, sometimes we are communicating in this particular way, sometimes in that particular way, what is appropriate to the times, and sometimes not very appropriately, but I have to say that too.
Yeah. So before that moment, were you conscious of looking for a teacher? I mean, that is the way you talked about it, isn't it, with Christmas Humphrey's Kiss a Go to Me story, then you were looking for a teacher. But is that retrospective? I mean, you know, or even before that moment, before Christmas Humphreys, were you conscious of kind of looking for a teacher? Was that a conscious?
Well, I got the Buddha. The Buddha was, you know, the Buddha was dead. And far away. And actually, the Buddha is safe in a way, because he's a long way away, and it's safe having a teacher like that. But when, if you want to change, and I wanted to change my life, you need something a bit more challenging. It needs to be somebody who can get to know you. You know, somebody who can get up close and personal. They used to say, and you can imagine the Buddha giving you advice, and maybe even the Buddha may be giving you advice, but a human being, and it's said, isn't it, that what you need at the start of your spiritual life is not a great bodhisattva, but you need a human being, an ordinary human being, and who knows you, you know, and can get up close and say, well, so tell me again, why are you doing that? It makes sense to you, but it doesn't make sense to me, you know. Somebody, in a way, who kind of guards your integrity. You're thinking you're doing something really daft, you know, and they care for you.
So has that happened with you, with Bhante? Because Bhante had ordained 272 people prior to you, I think. So how much contact did you have with Bhante, and did you have that sort of relationship where he would say, "Oh, Arthapriya, I'm not sure about that"?
Well, I got ordained, and I knew all this, that he got, you know, all these other disciples, and I decided that I was going to leave Bristol and move to Manchester. And I think we were told that it's good to let Bhante know good to, they would have said it's good to let your preceptor know, but Bhante was the only preceptor in those days. So good to let Bhante know if you're going to change things. And I thought, oh, Bhante's too busy, I don't need to tell him. But I put it into Shabda, and then I got a postcard from Bhante saying, I read in Shabda that you're moving, it comes as something of a surprise, and I wonder how this affects the situation in Bristol. But you say you want to make a big contribution to Manchester, so I look forward to seeing how that develops. And that's what I had to do. I couldn't disappear in Manchester. I had to make a big contribution, and I think I can say that I did, can't I? I think I can say that. But Bhante, I don't think people realise this. Bhante read Shabda, which is the order's newsletter you write in every month if you're a good order member. I'm not a good order member. And he hears things from other people. But yeah, you need with somebody like Bhante, you need like intermediaries. That's why we've got the Kalinamitra, spiritual friends, and you might have formal Kalinamitras, or you might have informal Kalinamitras, but you definitely need in your life people who, in some respects, are more mature than you. It might not be overall, but there is a, they've got a more mature outlook.
Yeah.
It can be very, very helpful. And the great thing is, in our movement, you can ignore their advice. Because we don't have obedience, there's no vow of obedience. And Bhante could tell you something and you don't need to follow it. Because we have, this permission to be stupid.
Did you make use of that permission?
I did. That's why I mentioned it. First time I went to see Bhante, I had this 2-hour meeting, and I had 3 things I wanted to ask him. Bhante, should I finish my relationship? I was in a relationship with someone. Should I give up my job? Should I move into the men's community? And I was hoping that Bhante would say, yeah, give up the relationship, which is what I wanted to happen. Give up your job and move into that community pronto. And he didn't. He said, when you get involved in the Dharma, it can be quite a big thing for your partner, and that you're really excited about this new thing. And, you can be a bit selfish, and you can, just looking after yourself. And sometimes you need to give more time to your partner. It was just... that's not what some of the order members were saying. My job, I was working in the social security. And he said, it must be great having a Buddhist working in the social security. Because you could bring, you could bring an aspect in to that job, that probably not there, and, not everybody needs to move into a community. No. And then when I came out, I decided that I was going to finish my relationship, hand in my notice, and move into the community. But I was really grateful to Bhante because I got myself into a knot, and I wanted him to take the blame in a way, to take the responsibility. Bhante said that. Bhante, said that pronto even, and he didn't. He opened things up for me, and it was a bit like somebody saying, "No, you need to take responsibility. These are important things. I can't decide. You need to decide for yourself." So I'm grateful he gave it back to me. He gave me more perspective on it, but he gave it back to me. And because I think I was a bit selfish, I'd found the Dharma after so long, some meaning in my life, and I was desperate. I was a desperate man. I wasn't considerate enough, about the feelings of my partner, and I regret that.
That's great. Thanks, Arthapriya. Well, at the moment, we're talking about this important area of kind of big decisions, changes in our life. But how does being a disciple impact day to day for you?
It's a really good question. Let's hear from you, and then maybe I could say.
Well, living with my teacher, I've got to get out, haven't I? Gosh.
Yeah, you can ask the questions, can't you? But
I think that was the agreement. I mean, I think it's interesting, isn't it? I think there's something about provisionality, I think, that you're trying to engage in your spiritual life, and you take responsibility for that. At the same time, it's not just I'm in charge here, I decide. There's a certain provisionality with which you sort of hold yourself, actually, and I think that's more noticeable in relation to the teacher. So there's this combination of taking full responsibility for yourself, but that not being a closed end of the story sort of thing. So I think that's an aspect of it. I think another aspect of it actually is just the emotional side of it. Bhante talked in terms of emotional connection. Well, appreciation, love, gratitude, realizing that not just realizing, but living as though your life is not all down to you.
Yeah.
And that means small incidental considerations, gifts, doing things for your teacher, considering, all that sort of stuff. But it's easier for me to say that, isn't it? Because I'm living with you. A lot of people don't live with their preceptor, so I wonder how. And you haven't, have you? Although Bhante is very, very prominent in your life.
Well, he's dead now.
Yeah.
But Bhante is very, very present in my mind, and I used to feel an imperative to express my gratitude for Bhante saving my life. I feel he really saved my life, and whenever I went to see him, I just couldn't find the words to express that. And even at the time of my I was going to get ordained in a few days' time, and I went down to see him, and it was a prime opportunity to say that. And I said something. I said, I'm very, very grateful, and it didn't come near to expressing that. And I got back to the retreat centre, and I thought, I've blown it again. I haven't been able to say it. And then I realised I can't say it, because the more I practice, the bigger it seems. The bigger the thing I've been given seems. And so what can I do? And I thought, the thing that I can do is to serve what Bhante loves, And Bhante loved the order and the movement. He'd given so much of his life to it. He said, in a way, he would have preferred sweeping the steps of a monastery out east somewhere than founding a Buddhist movement and order. He felt he was quite unsuited in a way, didn't he, to do that? But he came back and he did do that. So that's what I've been trying to do all these years. I've been trying to serve what he served. And that's the best way for me, the best way of saying thank you. But it's a debt, I will never be able to pay back. And it's a debt, debts are usually horrible things, aren't they, hanging over you. But it's a debt that I love, yeah. So I think, you've mentioned it a few times. I think with your teacher, in terms of, you being a disciple of a particular person, the person should be relating to you, the teacher should be relating to you completely in the love mode. And Bhante says you have to be careful because there's no end of people who would like to tell you what to do, who would like to respond to you in the power mode. And you've got to use your, discrimination. And you mustn't be taken in by, charisma. Some people are very charismatic, and you learn whether somebody is trustful. You learn about somebody's integrity by living with them. I don't mean literally living with them, although living with them is very, very good from that point of view. Seeing them in all sorts of situations, when they're inspired, when they're not so inspired, when they're tired, when they're, refreshed. You see them in all sorts of situations, and you get a sense, this man has integrity, this man I can trust, And you start off with small things. And it's not as contrived, that sounds quite contrived, but it's not contrived. It's sort of natural. Yeah. And my Kalinamitras, anyway, I'm disciples of my Kalinamitras, Sona and Surita. I've just seen them over years and years and years, how they behave, how they are. And I feel like I've got something to learn from them. And I have, and I have learned something from them. I feel deep gratitude to them. Yeah. But if there's nobody in your life like that, and you've been involved quite a while, or you're in the order, there's no one that you feel gratitude towards, or you feel love for, that you look up to. The Buddha says that is a painful state to be in. And the fact that you don't realise it is a painful state doesn't mean that it's not painful. Because everything is so egalitarian these days, isn't it? Nobody can teach me anything. Sometimes we think, don't we? And those 4 things Bhante talks about, you'll have to help me with this, I think.
Unreasonable independence.
Unreasonable independence.
Reasonable independence.
Yeah.
Unreasonable dependence.
Yeah.
And reasonable dependence.
Yeah. So sometimes we are unreasonably independent when we need help. An example he gives is like you are ill and you don't go to the doctor, you just take some pills, and you really need to go to the doctor. Or the plumbing needs fixing, and you think, oh, I'll do this. I've seen it on YouTube. You are being unreasonably independent, and then there's reasonable independence, where you. What do you do with this one? You
reasonable independence. Well, I suppose thinking for yourself. Yeah, this is what Bhante said.
Yeah.
And what am I going to?
Yeah.
What am I going to do? There's this factor.
Yeah.
I need to consider that.
Yeah.
Yeah. As opposed to going to Bhante and saying, well, do you think it's this? You can kind of think for yourself. Yeah. You don't need to get everything sort of signed off by Bhante.
Yeah. And then unreasonable dependence is where you know what to do. Like I knew what to do with those 3 questions I had. They weren't questions even. It was just sign these off for me, will you? I knew what to do, and I needed to do it. I needed to have the courage of my convictions, and then there's
reasonable dependence.
Reasonable dependence, where you need teaching in a particular area, you need help in a particular area. Meditation, you might need help with your meditation. You might need help thinking through an ethical matter, and in the end you will have to kind of decide that, but your teacher can be a great help in that. Because I think the disciple, I was talking to a friend of mine, somebody I ordained, and when Bhante released the paper, What is the Western Buddhist Order? He was asked to define the order, and he said basically the order can be defined as the community of my disciples, and the disciples of my disciples, and the disciples of my disciples' disciples, and so on. So it's a community of disciples. So that came out, and I was on a reunion retreat. People who had been ordained by me after 5 years. And one of the guys that I'd ordained said, I don't like this word disciple. I don't see myself as Arthapriya's disciple. You know? And I didn't mind that. I didn't mind him saying that. I think of myself as Arthapriya is my Kalyana Mitra, my spiritual friend. And somebody said, well, what do you mean by spiritual friend? And he said what he meant. And then this person said, well, I can't see any difference between that and what we're talking about is a disciple. And he said, I don't like that word. He said, I feel like you know, it's Jesus and his disciples, and I don't see, you know, Arthapriya like Jesus. Thank goodness he doesn't. And if you put disciple, you know, into Google, you get pictures of Jesus and the disciples. You do get other definitions too, but very often you get that. And it's this thing about, if you're a disciple, you have to uncritically do everything your teacher tells you. Well, if you know anything about our order, you know that we're not like that. You know, if only sometimes. And there's no obedience kind of in the order. We think for ourselves. Sometimes we think for ourselves when I don't think what we've thought is very, you know, it's not great thinking.
There's a bit of unreasonable independence going on.
There is. I mean, to even grace it with the word thinking sometimes it's more like feeling. You feel that this is right. You know, we've all done it, haven't we? I've done it and do it. But no, it's not. It's not uncritical. So, you know, if somebody comes to me and says, "I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think?" Believe me, the people that I've ordained don't just take that. They don't just take what I say. You know, they don't say, "Right, that is what I will do then." And I don't. I'm glad they don't do that, because sometimes if they do that, you get the blame for it. You know, if it doesn't go well, well, he told me what to do. You know, that's one of the reasons why Bhante said that he'd stopped doing that. You have to have quite strong individuality and integrity, and be, you know, quite a robust thinker and all the rest of it, to be able to be in a position to be told what to do. You know what I mean? Because it's reactive saying, no, I'm not doing that, that's kind of reactive, but it's also reactive saying, just swallowing it and saying that, you know, you will do it because you've been told to do it. You have to understand why you're doing it. You know, why is it a good idea to do this, not that? And I think that's why I was given the name Arthapriya. It means the lover of the meaning. And because when Bhante was with us and was leading study, and I say, but Bhante, you said in this, you know, something very different than what you're saying now, you know. So, you know, I felt encouraged to think for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't really thinking very much, but wasn't great quality thinking, but, you know, I was encouraged to do that.
Mm.
So don't think of disciple as kind of you're very subservient and you can't use your critical kind of faculty.
Mm.
You need your critical faculty to practice the Dharma, I think. But you also need to come from a good place if you are engaging your critical faculty. You need to genuinely want the best outcome, not just the outcome that kind of suits you. Do you see what I mean by that?
So maybe it's a good time to ask, what is a good disciple, and are you a good disciple?
Well, I'll answer the last one first. Yeah, no. I think if you're a good disciple, you're a bad disciple. You know what I mean? You're unfinished. You are
work in progress.
I'm still trying to work out what it is to be a disciple, because Bhante in his teaching has stressed that we need to become individuals. We need to become true individuals, and yet there's this word disciple, and how do those two things kind of sit together? Where I need to share my life and be open about my life with another, somebody I trust, and I need to be an individual. I need to take responsibility for myself, and I think the two things they don't contradict one another, but you have to work it out. You know, that's not always easy to do, because finding your motives, finding what your true intentions are in a situation is not always easy, and we rationalise. We don't always tell ourselves the truth of the situation. So yes, I'm still learning what it is. When this paper came out, I had no problem thinking of myself as a disciple of Bhante's, and I went to him to talk about it, and I said, I have no problem, but I do have a problem about having disciples. It just seems so kind of, I don't know, pompous or something, you know. My disciples, you know, and he said to me, but I wasn't there when you ordained them. You were. It was you ordained them. You know, I wasn't there. You need to take responsibility for that. Again. So, you know, I listened, because he's my teacher, and, but I still emotionally wasn't quite happy with that. And then later on, he wrote a postscript about that word disciple, and he said, what we want to get at with the word disciple is how we should take it, and that no word he can think of is really suitable for what a disciple actually means. Arthapriya, the man who said he couldn't see himself as a disciple of me, has changed his mind, because I messaged him yesterday, knowing that I was going to talk about him today. And he said, "What about the word protege?" You know, and a protege, you know, there's a bit of favoritism, nepotism, even. My protege. And apprentice, pupil, student. There's no kind of real word that gets to the heart of the matter, that there's that emotionally strong, positive emotional connection and feeling of gratitude. So I think we just left there, really.
Yeah. In a way, the way Bante's put it, it's very, very understated, isn't it? But it's also quite good. You know, coming back to that feel emotional connection with and a sense of gratitude towards.
Yeah.
Quite interesting.
Yeah. And it's one thing I'm happy to say that I'm a disciple, but I never, well, to think of insisting upon it seems ridiculous. You know? So if I've, ordained you, and I have ordained several people here, you don't need to think of me, you don't need to think of yourself as my disciple. But what I do love is that we are a community of disciples. And years ago, this young order member said to me that we were doing the prostration practice, and in the prostration practice, you visualize all the teachers, the great teachers in the Buddhist tradition, and you prostrate, you throw yourself on the floor, and you say, "Omahang, to the best of all refuges I go." And he said he was doing this behind me, and he said, and there you were, Arthapriya. It was like you were on the refuge tree, you know. And I was prostrating behind my preceptor. He liked that. And I said, yes, but I was prostrating as well. You know, it wasn't just him prostrating to me, I was prostrating. So your teacher has a teacher who has a teacher who has a teacher. None of us stand alone, and even the Buddha wanted to pay reverence, to look up to had that response, and in a way decided to reverence and revere the Dharma.
The Dharma.
Bhante thinks it's something that is inherent in being a human being, that we want to look up, but so often we're disappointed. You know, so often, who in our life, you look at the news, I'm not going to mention Donald Trump, and politicians and influencers, and who is there? Who is there to look up to? So when I met the Buddha that night, and when I met Bhante, and when I met other order members that I could look up to, it was a relief, you know.
So perhaps just finishing with this point about, as Bhante says, it is necessary. It's essential, discipleship, or whatever we call it, that word not being adequate, is kind of essential to Buddhism.
Yeah.
So how would you, someone says, well, how? What would your response to that be?
I mean, how to do it? Or?
No, as in, how is it essential?
Well, I suppose if you don't think there's anybody to look up to, how are you going to get enlightened, you know? Well, how can there even be enlightenment? You know, if nobody is more developed than you, if nobody's developed their humanity more than you, is more aware, more awake than you are. I mean, that's pretty depressing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And I've definitely met people who are more aware, kinder, more compassionate, wiser than I am, and that is an encouragement to me.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be like that, but of course it will manifest differently in me because I'm a different human being, and it will manifest differently in you. As you grow in our Sangha, you will bring your own qualities into the Sangha, and you'll be if you carry on being involved, carry on genuinely practicing the Dhamma, you will be a doorway for somebody else and other people into the Dhamma and the Sangha. As I'm sure some of you are now. I know some of you are now. Yeah. So look around. You see that, don't you? And not just in our Sangha. You see that with human beings. Outside. To use outside. And whenever I meet somebody who's got, integrity, real integrity, something really moved by that. Yeah.
Mm.
Mr. Trump doesn't represent, the
pinnacle.
The pinnacle.
Maybe on that note.
Yes. Maybe not on that note.
Rewind that bit on the video. Great. Well, thanks very, very much, Arthapriya, for coming and sharing your remaining energy.
Thank you
available
for coming on such a lovely day. It's lovely out there.
It's true. Yeah, and we thought probably not questions, didn't we? Because
well, maybe we could have one or two.
One or two.
I'm forming a pool at the moment, so. Maybe we have one or two questions, and then maybe you, if I get too tired, you could answer.
Oh yeah, okay.
An obvious question to me was you touched on it, but I just wanted to say a little bit more about difficulty. Challenge.
Yeah.
The disciple being a real problem for the teacher. I'm impressed recently by reading the life of Milarepa and Bhante's teachings on it.
Yeah.
The fact that Milarepa and his, the lineage, they all made real difficulty for their And in a way, what happens when it gets difficult between the disciples really going off on a, maybe on a wrong path, they're really doing something even wicked or whatever it may be. I mean, it doesn't have to be extreme. You see what I mean? What is the area of difficulty? How do we deal with it?
Yeah. Well, we've had our ups and downs, haven't we? When we had Windhorse, the business, it's closed now for 10 years, but we had this big business, Buddhist business, and Arthasiddhi was my boss. And I worked in a warehouse, and Arthasiddhi was my boss, and that threw up interesting challenges, didn't it?
It did.
Because you might think, me being his private preceptor, I was the boss of him. It's not like that at all, but he was my boss in this situation. In fact, if you look at it like that, he was there were more hours of the day when he was my boss than when I was. And we had some difficulties, didn't we?
Yeah.
And you were very, very challenging. And I think I was very challenging to you, wasn't I? Yeah. You got anything to say on that?
I mean, it's a difficult area to. Difficulties are different, aren't they? And how does one, coming up with what to say about difficulties in general is a challenge. I think one thing I was very struck actually in those volumes by Bhante saying, well, actually, discipleship in a certain way, you're being brought up against yourself, in a certain way, against yourself. And so it's inevitable, actually, that there will be reactions. I thought that was quite helpful, because I think we can have a model of kind of wanting to be perfect, but actually intrinsic to being a disciple is not being perfect. Like you were saying, a good disciple is actually a bad disciple. So I think it's helpful. I think partly with discipleship, we don't know what we're dealing with as Westerners. It's quite unusual to us. We don't know what we're dealing with. And so I think that's worth taking into account, that actually reactions, difficulties are not necessarily a bad sign. In fact, at some level, they're inevitable. So I think sort of how we take them is important. It's not that you're a bad disciple simply because there's a reaction going on. So I think that's one thing. And I think in a way, really understanding what loyalty, when we get ordained, that one of the vows is with loyalty to my teachers. So what does that actually mean, given that reactions at some point are likely to come up? I think that's what you have to work out, including the fact that your teacher will be making mistakes, because your teacher is not a Buddha. And that's, that you're not choosing a teacher because they're perfect. You're choosing a teacher because they're a disciple, i.e. because they're able to work with their mistakes. So I think there's a lot around really us actually learning what it is, what discipleship is, and what being a teacher is, and therefore sort of what to expect from it, before we can even work out how to, what to do in this particular situation. Yeah.
If I could add something. I mean, I have had quite a few challenging people, and I think you just have to hang in there, and sometimes you are the last person holding the rope, to use that kind of metaphor, that they've fallen out with their friends, they've fallen out with their kalanimitras, they don't come along to the centre anymore, they maybe stop meditating, what they used to love, they now, criticise and all the rest of it. And this particular guy I'm thinking of, I've just held the rope, because I realised if I let go of the rope, he's got nobody else. He's put himself in such a situation, he's so on an orbit in a way, that if I let go, he might just kind of disappear. And I remember the night when I ordained him, and I remember that, and that's what keeps me going. But there's a loyalty to him. It's not just his. He takes a vow to be loyal to me. There's a kind of loyalty to him too, and sometimes I have wanted to get the chop out, chop the rope, and let him kind of fall. But I hope nobody would do that to me if I was in that situation, because human life is just difficult. And sometimes we are very, very challenging when maybe we don't mean to be, but we just, life is just so challenging. We hit out at those closest to us, don't we? And yeah, so it's going to come up. It definitely is going to come up. And if somebody puts you on a pedestal, at some point they're going to want to kick you over, and yeah, it's much better to jump. You can't work with some people. The more you tell people that you are a flawed human being, the more they think, oh, you're so wonderful. You're wonderfully flawed. Until it impacts on them.
Any more questions, Prudaka?
Yeah, I mean, you've pretty much said this, that this thing about discipleship is a really living, vibrant thing. And I'm thinking, specifically of you and me, that we get on pretty well on an ordinary level. And there's nothing hugely disciple-ness about that, but it really works. But sometimes you are, or you communicate, or I get something from you whereby, as it were, you do something, and there is this almost this me putting you on a pedestal. But it doesn't last very long. It does keep going because you don't behave in that way.
Yeah.
So we do get back to having breakfast together or whatever it may be. But it is a constantly living process. It's not like I've got to be a disciple, paid up member. It does come and go. It is an awkward thing. So to say I'm an absolute disciple, sometimes it's just our relationship is so ordinary, it doesn't feel like that. But there are those moments when something else goes on, and it is that vibrancy that makes it work, that makes it a bit awkward, but also makes it very beautiful and very tangible to work on. So I've got to keep asking that question. What do I do? How do I do this? And it's never quite satisfactorily answered, but it does something keeps going on.
Yeah. Well, you've become a preceptor yourself, haven't you? You know.
I've got to do that.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Any other questions? Hi, Luke.
So, I was very struck by how much you emphasised the lack of obedience, actually. Because when I did What is the Order last year, reading the stuff about Bhante and how much he emphasised how people would go to him, ask him a question and completely ignore what he said. And I was just like, how could you do that, in a sense? Like, you have a teacher, you just completely ignore it and just do what you already know what you're going to do, what I ask him. And I was reflecting, because my main teacher, Maitri Bandhu, I asked him, you had a talk here. I was like, could I, Miss Mitrasey, come and see Arthapriya's talk? And he said no. So I went to Mitrasey. I wanted to see your talk, but I took that very seriously. But obviously I'm saying this with like you said, big discernment. You can't just be like, if he tells me to break up with my fiancée, I'm going to do it. I have some level of discernment about that. But I think in the West we kind of teeter towards the critical, I'm not going to do what he says. So I am quite surprised how much you emphasise the opposite.
Yeah. I think I did that because that's been my experience, and I mean, all I ask, people who see me as their teacher is that they listen, sincerely to what I say. Not that they necessarily do what I say, but they really listen because it might be helpful to them. And who doesn't want something that could help? In a way that's a rhetorical question, but sometimes we don't want that thing that could help. I remember, he's not here, is he? I remember seeing this guy who I ordained, and we were having a coffee, and I noticed that he was wearing a ring, and he didn't normally wear a ring. And I said, oh, what's that? He said, oh yes, he had got engaged, without mentioning it. And it's not like you have to ask if you can get married. It's just that if we are spiritual friends, we share our life with one another. So you'd think, he would do that because that would be important. I remember somebody actually getting married and saying to me, well, I didn't think it was an important life decision. And so have you said that to her? You know, he doesn't, or can I say it? So, you know, it's not like asking for permission, it's more that the things that impact your Dharma life, here is somebody that you respect. You think they maybe have a greater perspective on things than you do, sometimes anyway. Why not? The most natural thing in the world would be to tell them about that, to open your life up to them. Because that's what friends do, isn't it? They open their lives up to one another. And because it's always in the love mode, it always should be in the love mode, there should be no fear of getting, heavy disapproval. I mean, if there is a fear, it's probably coming from you, You're seeing your teacher as a authority figure, and they're not. They're not an authority figure. Yeah. Anyway, he gave you the wrong advice. You should have come. I'm only joking. Because I just remembered it's being filmed.
You know much about the he'll come.
Can I tentatively add that maybe there is a difference when you're in the ordination training process, because you've explicitly asked for training. That means sort of feedback and yes, do explicit advice. So that's different. That is different, and you're not as yet a disciple full. You haven't fully entered into that relationship as yet. You're training to enter into that relationship. So I think that is a bit different.
Yeah.
And how could you know how to enter into it if nobody ever tells you don't do that, do this, try that. But it's taken in the spirit of training. It's not just an order, it's a training for you to reflect on, was that, and you can talk with him more, and he will, that can bring up a deepening sort of understanding of what ordination's about, what training's about. Just to throw that in.
That's good. Yeah.
One last thing I just wanted to throw in as well. Has anyone else got a question? But just because we have talked about difficulties and stuff, it's easy, isn't it? It's difficult to put together difficulty and joy. It sounds like this discipleship is difficult, and there's difficulties come up, and it goes in that box. But I think one of the main things that I've learned from you about discipleship is the joy of it. Actually, it is a wonderful thing to have someone who you wholeheartedly look up to. It's a wonderful and rare thing, and that should be a joy, shouldn't it? Not a sort of difficulty. Of course, there might be challenges to that, but that's the basis. Is that it's a fortunate thing, and actually, if we are fortunate, then that leads to joy, doesn't it? Feeling. So I think that's an important aspect to having a teacher. Do we dwell on that, or does it get a little bit, having a teacher means I need to do this? Is it a little bit almost, I don't know, protocol-y? Do we actually sort of dwell on how fortunate we are? If we don't, are we even a disciple, sort of thing? Anyway.
Well, I certainly felt joy, gratitude towards Bhante.
It's evident.
And he talked about finding the teacher within. Bhante did, and I think you find the teacher within by first of all having the teacher without, because I could imagine talking something over with Bhante. I mean, I have to imagine it now because he's no longer with us. Otherwise, left lots and lots of teaching. you get a sense, an inner sense of what to do. You find the inner teacher. Yeah. And that's really, really important. Ooh, I better.
Should we leave? Yeah, let's leave it there. So thanks very, very much, Arthapriya, for coming, sharing so much with us.